What's up, everybody? Welcome to another overtime episode of Running Out the Clock. I am your Ole Miss beat writer for Running Out the Clock Sports, Chandler. I'm joined by Keith Harkins. Say hello, Keith.
It's me.
And we are here to give you takes more accurate than an Ole Miss field goal kicker. That's what we're here to do. And it's a little bit late in the season to be doing this, but rest assured we had every intention to do this like 3 weeks ago, but forgot. But we're gonna take a minute to kind of run down the new SEC head coaches and give them midterm grades. So that's what we're gonna do. And I figure we can start with the guys that are going to require the least amount of discussion, just to kind of get it out of the way. And so let's do this. Let's talk about what grades are you giving these coaches at the midterm, and then B, kind of how they stack up against the guys that also, at least, I mean, we don't have any inside knowledge, but at least seem like from media reports and things like that, at least seem like we're going to be other candidates on the list. So we're going to start with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. And Keith, what grade are you giving old Jimbo?
At this point, and especially given kind of the fact that he's wanting to install an offense that is different from the type of players that he has, I'm going to give Jimbo an A-. He's got the Aggies sitting at 5-2 right now, with sole possession of third in the SEC West. And their two losses came against number 2 Clemson by 2 points at home, and against number 1 Arkansas 45-23.
Arkansas is not number
Alabama. Well, listen, it starts with an A and it's red, so it gets confusing out there.
This is the weirdest timeline.
Yes, we have created a rip in space-time, and we are now living in a world where Arkansas is a dominant college football team.
Welcome to the Upside Down, and David is the Demogorgon.
Chad Morris is the Demogorgon.
No, Chad Morris is 11.
Oh God! Now, I just want to see Chad Morris and superpowered Nick Saban having some sort of like superhero fight. But no, so they lost to number 1 Alabama on the road, 45-23, in a game where they were super competitive for a quarter and a half, and then Alabama'd all over them.
They demogorgoned on them.
they demogorgoned. Trademark that.
By the way, welcome to our Stranger Things podcast.
Running Out the Clock, OT Stranger Things. After that Alabama game, they had a really weird game against Arkansas. They upset number 13 Kentucky 20-14 at home, and then won a tough road game against South Carolina at South Carolina. I think he's kind of jumped out ahead of where a lot of people thought they were going to be, myself included. I think that old Jimbo is kind of ahead of the chains out there at Aggie Land.
And I have no disagreement with anything you just said. In fact, A- is the exact grade that I gave him as well, for all the same reasons. And, with Jimbo, there's very little to discuss as far as like comparing him to anybody, because it seemed like A&M decided they wanted him,
their guy.
And they went and got him. And it took a lot of money to do it, but good.
They just airdropped, gold bars like propaganda leaflets over Russia.
which comparing it to Russia is very very very
it's very 2018.
It's very 2018. It's very accurate considering the weird press conference he had where he got off the plane and the band was playing, and it very much looked like a third world dictatorship, kind of thing. But yeah, no disagreement there. So let's move on. This one's near and dear to your heart. Let's go Dan Mullen. What grade do you give him?
I'm going to give Dan an A here, and the only reason I would not give him an A+ is because of that second week loss to Kentucky. And people listening to this may think, well, that's harsh, Keith. You're Florida's 6-1. They've beaten 2 top 25 teams. In fact, one of them was a top 5 team. And so you're miles ahead of where Florida, thought they were going to be. So why not an A+? Well, the Kentucky game was a unmitigated disaster. And it honestly kind of shocked a lot of Florida fans into thinking, well, surprised the Charleston Southern blowout wasn't really indicative of where Florida actually was. But Dan and the Gators turned it around a lot. Went on the road 2 straight weeks against Tennessee and Mississippi State, and got a couple of hard-earned victories. He's got solid game plans. He's calling good calls. More importantly, he's calling good calls at the right time. One of my worries about Dan Mullen coming to Florida was he would bring some of those weird play calling habits that he had at State, where he seemed like maybe he either got a little bit too far ahead of himself or kind of outthought himself a little bit. But so far that hasn't manifested at Florida, and he's taken a team that does not have the talent that the organization's used to, and is putting them in positions to be very successful very early. So just a solid A for him.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with A+, because I know that to Florida fans that Kentucky loss is frustrating, and you have every right to be frustrated with that, but I think that it really doesn't really matter. I think probably what happens at Florida this year, because I think Kentucky probably wins that game anyway. For one, I mean, look, 31 years or however long it was, like every streak ends, and so it was bound to end sooner or later. And Kentucky's really good this year. They really are. I know that Texas A&M loss was disappointing for them, but Kentucky is right there in the thick of the. I mean, we're almost we're almost into November, and Kentucky's still in the thick of the SEC East race. Mm-hmm. So that's Mullen losing to a team that has got experience and stability, which his team does not necessarily have, at least as far as stability goes. So I'm not, I think from somebody looking in, from the outside, that's not necessarily a disappointing loss. So I'm going to go A+ just because he's gotten so much more out of that team than you thought that he was going to be able to get. And it's, he's turned Felipe Franks into a, serviceable quarterback. I think he's even maybe verging on the border of good. Not quite ready to say that yet, but he's done a good job with the team that a lot of people thought really didn't have the offensive weapons it needed to succeed in the SEC, and that's exactly what it's doing. So I'm going to give Mullen an A+, and I think that A+ is only made that much prettier when you look and see the way that, early on it was rumored that Chip Kelly was the front runner for the job, and he's been terrible at UCLA, and Scott Frost might have been in the realm of conversation for that job, and even though I think Scott Frost would have been great at Florida. I think Scott Frost is going to be great at Nebraska. It's just taking some time because that program is such a mess. But when you look at the struggles that some of the other coaches they were considering or having, then I think that makes the Mullen hire that much more commendable, because they, whether they got turned down by those guys or whether those guys, Florida really kind of maybe had their sights set on Mullen all along. Who knows? It's hard to know without kind of being in the room as some of those discussions happen. But when you certainly look at the names that he was being mentioned alongside, it just makes the Mullen hire look that much better.
Yeah, for sure. And, so far in 2018, the other two coaches have a combined 3 wins for their respective team, with all of them actually coming lately. Both coaches started out like 0-4 before Kelly got his 2 wins, and then Scott Frost, of course, started out 0-5 at Nebraska with their win coming against Minnesota this past weekend, with a pretty big win. But yeah, I think what Florida was going for
hang on real quick though. I mean, just to kind of be fair, they're completely different situations. Chip Kelly,
yeah, sure,
and Chip Kelly and Scott Frost would not be 0 and whatever at Florida right now,
right,
or 1-5 and 2-4. So it's not necessarily the fairest comparison, but it is, as you kind of look and see, that it does, it does at least stand out a little bit.
Yeah. So Nebraska, proving that Nebraska might be on par with Ohio State. They were beaten by Purdue 42-28. So should have a close one here in a few weeks whenever Nebraska goes to Columbus, Ohio. But yeah,
I hate it for Urban Meyer. Such a good guy, great representative of the sport.
He will probably have exited the program with health concerns by then.
He's going to fake his own death one day, isn't he?
Like he actually is. Like he's going to have one of his assistants go and get a cadaver from the medical wing of Ohio State and dress him up in a Papa John's outfit, and everyone's just going to believe that that's him.
No, he's going to step away from Ohio State because of like head issues or whatever, and then when Saban retires, he's going to take over at Alabama. And he's going to win like 7 national championships, and then
he's going to have access to the Alabama Lazarus Pit.
This is genius. It's going to come out that he was like running a prostitution ring out of the Cayo house or something, and he's just going to fake his own death. He's just like, well, Urban Meyer's dead, and then all of a sudden his twin brother like Mervyn Wire is going to show up at like Miami
Suburban
Ohio or something.
New head coach of Ohio State, Suburban Meyer, no relation to Urban Meyer.
It's gonna be like that episode of The Office where Dwight tries to interview for the job but won't take the bandages off his face.
Yeah. It's a burn victim or something. Yeah. So I think that Chip Kelly was kind of a big name that Florida was going after. And of course, like you never know how these negotiations work out really. Florida could have been eyeing Dan Mullen as their guy from the get-go, and we're just using Chip Kelly and Scott Frost as tools of leverage. But yeah,
I think that's actually highly likely.
Yeah.
Because the common denominator here, well, maybe not common denominator, but the key factor here is Jimmy Sexton.
Right. And it wasn't a secret at all that whenever Florida and Will Muschamp parted ways, that they talked to Dan Mullen at State a lot, and Dan just wasn't ready to leave yet, but yeah. So looks like Florida got their guy, and it looks like it's paying off early, and so we'll see where it goes.
All right. So the next few guys, I mean, Jimbo Fisher and Dan Mullen are very obvious slam dunks. The other 4 guys are pretty pretty up in the air. let's go with Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee next. What do you think about the job he's done this year?
I mean, when you it's such a weird thing to look at Tennessee. They're 3-4 in his first year, fifth in the East. They really have no hope of competing this year for sure, maybe for the next couple of years. But when you look at their schedule and their wins and losses, they opened up the year with a loss to a ranked West Virginia team, but kept it close until halftime. They lost to a quickly rising Florida team in a really embarrassing manner. Of course, they had, I think, 6 turnovers that game, one of which the tight end literally just like fast pitch softballed the football out of the back of the end zone. And then they go on the road and lose to Georgia. And then this past weekend, they lost pretty badly to Alabama, which is the case for literally everyone.
Yeah, that's going to be everybody in college football this year.
Yeah, and their wins
just makes the sport so much fun to watch.
Yeah, just you got 3 guarantees in life. You're born, you're going to die, and Alabama's going to beat whoever they play by 40. But, they already have a quote-unquote signature win over a top 25 team in Auburn. Oh, gosh, they were at Auburn. I thought they were in Knoxville.
No, that game was on the Plains. It was bad.
Oof, that's rough.
Things are
so much worse.
Things are not great at Auburn right now.
This time next year, we may be having a podcast about the brand new coach at Auburn and how he's doing.
This time next year, we will be having that conversation. I'm not kidding. I think Malzahn's done.
Really? Well, we'll if they do get rid of him, I don't think it'll be before the end of the year. I mean, they've gotten this far. Might as well finish out the year. Maybe. I
think a loss.
If they're losing by 50 to like Alabama at halftime, they might just let the War Eagle have a shot at them.
I think an Ole Miss loss would have ended Gus this week, but that obviously didn't happen. So
yeah. I would say that I'd probably give Jeremy Pruitt a B- just because he's lost the games that he was supposed to lose, and except for Auburn, which you can maybe argue if they should have lost that game or not, because Auburn is clearly just a downhill rolling dumpster fire at this point. So I'm going to give him a B- for the year so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been really, really critical of Tennessee, and I still don't think that was a particularly good hire. But I think that what he's done this season has been pretty impressive. I think he's done a good job for a team that over the last several years has been really, really beaten down. And I think as you look at the rest of the season, you can see, hey, these guys might end up in a bowl game this year, and that's good for them. That's big for his first year, and so I'm going to give him a B. And
I mean, they got, who is this? Who the heck even is this team? Charlotte?
I'm gonna say that's a win.
Yeah, they got Charlotte. So they're at South Carolina this weekend, which, South Carolina turns out they aren't great. So maybe a win. And then they've got games still left against Missouri and Vanderbilt. So they could very well become bowl eligible. And the most important thing, I think, about Jimmy Pruitt is that he didn't show up and instantly call out every other team in the SEC.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal because former coaches have done that and immediately got waylaid.
Yeah. I mean, good solid first year for Jeremy Pruitt. And that's certainly, it's not going to hurt recruiting. It's going to be a great momentum step forward for them. Because as we all know that coaches associated with Alabama only recruit fairly and above board and never do anything illegal or underhanded.
Ever.
So Yeah, I feel like Pruitt's a pretty easy thing. So let's go. Let's save the Mississippi schools for last. Let's talk about Chad Morris for a second. What do you think about the job Chad Morris has done at Arkansas?
Yeah. The University of Alabama. I don't think he's done a bad job. I think pretty much everybody agreed that Arkansas was going to be dead last in the SEC West, maybe even dead last in the SEC period. They just did not have a whole lot of talent. And like they had a really bad defense. The only point of their entire team that seemed to have or seemed to offer even a little bit of hope was their backfield. But their offensive line is super questionable. He just doesn't have a whole lot to work with. And when you're in the SEC West, which cannibalizes itself every weekend, except for Alabama, who's actually the one driving the train, then like what can you do? Lose to literally everybody except for East Illinois, I guess that was, and Tulsa. But I will say this: the Tulsa win was impressive just because of what it was and what it meant. Because Tulsa has been playing some teams really close all year, and then Arkansas's got some key injuries, and they managed to pull out a victory and shut out Tulsa. So good for them. I'm gonna give Chad Morris a B- also.
I'm actually going to give Chad Morris an incomplete because I think we don't have and I've given one other coach on the list an incomplete as well, but I think we just don't have enough on Arkansas right now to really know what kind of job he's doing. I mean, there are definitely some positives. I mean, Ty Story has been a fairly pleasant surprise for them at quarterback, and he seems like he's getting better and playing hard and somebody that the team rallies around. And so that's definitely a good sign. But I think that when you look at what he's trying to do, it's such a completely different style. It's a completely different team that he's trying to build. And so I think that while there are some positives and there are a ton of negatives, I mean, they're really bad. But none of that's his fault.
Right. For sure. I would say that he, as a coach, has done about as good of a job as you can with what he's gotten left over from the Burt regime, and like there's been signs, there's been bright spots. They played a really tough game against A&M. We're even looking to upset. They played Ole Miss really close. They got Vandy this week before they finish out the year against LSU and State. So, we'll see how it goes, and maybe have a more full assessment at the end of the year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's going to take a couple of years before you really get a sense of what Chad Morris is, just because it is a crazy rebuild. As far as the other coaches that Arkansas considered, I really don't know kind of who was on their list. We didn't talk about Tennessee and how that was compared, because Tennessee apparently offered everyone,
literally everybody.
And so you have to compare them to every other team in the country.
I think they put a classified in Monster.com looking for a head college football coach.
Yeah, I actually applied. It was nice. But yeah, that was far and away the most bizarre coaching search I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as Arkansas is concerned, I don't really know who else they went after. It does seem like Chad Morris was really, really high on their list, because one of the things that's always been important at Arkansas is that you recruit the state of Texas well, and it seems like Chad Morris might have a pretty good beat on that, considering he had spent so much time at SMU there in the DFW area.
Mm-hmm.
Has a pretty good recruiting reputation on offense from his time at Clemson as well. So, that may have also been a situation like A&M where they just went and got the guy they wanted, and it turned out to be good, be a good fit.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, a topic of much controversy in our group chat, and a topic of much controversy just online in general. Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State. What grade do you give him?
I wanted to give him an incomplete here, but I'm going to give Joe a C. And the only reason why it's probably not lower is because the game plan for the Auburn game showed that maybe he's not as stubborn of a coach as we all thought he was, and that he can take what strengths he has and firmly use them. But then he turns around and has the game against LSU where he tried to make Nick Fitzgerald throw the ball downfield a whole lot. Losing at Kentucky, that was a really bad game. But maybe you can forgive it because it was a rainy night and it was a weird game and there was the whole reffing situation, which you can get into or not.
No, you can't.
Sort of take it or leave it there. But there were some veins there that you could see a cause of concern for, and you hoped that he would have changed the game plan for the Florida game, and then lo and behold, he rolls out the exact same game plan. Stats are almost identical, and so there's a lot to dislike about how things have started for the Bulldogs, but you hope that his coaching pedigree kicks in at some point, and that he has a brighter future. It's tough given the offense that he wants to install versus the personnel that he has. So that's always tough. But at the same time, you look at a team like Florida and Dan Mullen, and it's a similar situation there. But Dan's putting his players in a place to succeed, and Joe Moorhead's not necessarily doing that, at least not consistently every week. So all of that considered, I would give Joe Moorhead a C at this point.
Yeah, I give Moorhead a C as well. I think he's done fine. I think that probably realistically, even if Mullen is there, they lose to both LSU and Kentucky anyway. Maybe the Florida game's different, but that depends on who Florida hires. The only thing that gives me pause is everything that you just said relies on buying the narrative that this was an especially talented Mississippi State team, and I don't think that it is. I think that they have. I think that their defense is good. And we'll get a taste of that on Saturday for sure, because they finally are going to play a team that has been competent on offense against air. I don't think Joe Burrow could consistently throw touchdown passes in a 7-on-7 drill with no defensive backs. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And the same deal with Kentucky's quarterback. They're going to finally play a balanced offense that has a good passing attack, and so we'll see. But I do think that you can look at their defense and say they're pretty good. I think they've got like the number one scoring defense in the nation. Some of that, I don't know. Some of that I think is a little misleading because they brutalized their non-conference opponents so badly. and LSU and Florida didn't score a ton of points on them, but it is what it is. They're a good defense.
Yeah.
But I think that on offense, like I don't think their offensive line is very good. Kylan Hill is good, but he's shown to be kind of more hype than talent right now, and that's not necessarily to knock him. It's just to say that maybe the guys around him aren't that good or whatever. But the wide receivers have massively underperformed. I know some of that's on Fitzgerald, but even when Fitzgerald makes the throws, they're just dropping it. They drop a lot of them. And then Nick Fitzgerald is a terrible passer. He's always been a terrible passer, but Mullen had a system that worked for him, and he could run that system. And so on the one hand, I think that you look and you're like, well, yeah, of course you just change your play calling for him. But I think a lot of times we think that because like when I used to play NCAA football every year, and I just had a really athletic quarterback, I could just change the playbook from game to game and call whatever plays I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how it works in reality. They knew what Joe Moorhead was going to do on offense. I mean, that's part of what you sit down in an interview and you do is you say, hey, this is what we're trying to do on offense. And you can't mortgage the guy's long-term career for one team. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that because they do like, oh, this team is so talented and this, that, and the other. And like, I just don't think it's talented. I don't see a single surefire NFL player on their offense, period. I mean, there might be some guys that go, maybe Colin Hill's career turns into something like that, or an offensive lineman here or there. But Aris Williams and none of their wide receivers are. So Nick Fitzgerald definitely isn't. So I just don't know how much I think that he has to work with. In addition to what he does have, doesn't fit what he wants to do, and so while I am tempted to also give him an incomplete, like you said, I'm going to go with a C because I think he's done fine. I think winning the Auburn game was big, and then just kind of taking care of business against everybody else. That's about. I mean, that's about what you could hope for. So I'll go with the C there as well.
Yeah, and the only cause for concern, and again, this is more geared towards this year and less towards Joe Moorhead's maybe indications for his career there, and that in the games that they've won, they're averaging like 35 to 40 points a game. In the games that they've lost, they've scored a combined 16 points. And that's not good. But when you look at the games that they've lost, they've all been against incredibly aggressive defenses. And so, maybe it's a talent thing. We'll be able to look.
And their wins are Auburn, who's a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen F. Austin, who doesn't count. Kansas State, who might be the slowest team in college football. I mean, it's not like they're scoring a ton of points, but they're scoring a ton of points against bad competition.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what that means or doesn't mean.
Right.
As far as who else they were thinking about hiring, I'm not really sure.
I think they had their eyes set on Moorhead as soon as they knew that Mullen was leaving, because it was a really quick turnaround. So much so that it looked like maybe they knew that Mullen was leaving a lot earlier than the announcement indicated. I think it was like less than a week.
I think that I don't think they knew where he was going, but I think they knew he was gone after the Egg Bowl. Yeah. I think they knew he was gone before the Egg Bowl.
Yeah. It seemed like they had their sights set on Joe Moorhead early, and they got their guy
realistically, they knew he was gone before the season because he hired Jimmy Sexton. You don't hire Jimmy Sexton when you're happy with your current job.
Well,
you just don't.
And you don't change agents, period, if you're happy with how things are going.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. But yeah, I'm with you. It seems like he was the guy they wanted. They went and got him. So finally, we come to Matt Luke. You go first. What grade do you give him?
I am probably going to give Matt Luke an incomplete for two reasons. The first reason being that he inherited a mess from Hugh Freeze. He did a good job as interim coach and kind of steering the Titanic away from the iceberg after it had already hit it twice.
It's hit the iceberg. It's backed up. It's hit it again. It's backed up and hit it again, and it might be about to hit it one more time.
Yeah, but he manages to like steer it off of the interstate before it gets hit by a million icebergs at once. And the second reason is that I think he also inherited his coaching staff. So he's basically had zero control over his program since he took over as head coach. And things have been super up and down for Ole Miss. The losses have been tough to watch, and even some of the wins have,
they have been.
And so I know that you'll have a lot to say about this, but I don't know if Matt Luke, you can say, was the right hire or the wrong hire, but it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with him and the program whenever he's finally able to kind of bring in who he wants and needs as assistants. So I'm going to give him an incomplete.
Yeah, I'm giving him an incomplete too, but I'm bouncing between incomplete and an F, and here's why. And the reasons that I would give him an F play into the incomplete. So I'm going to explain the incomplete first. and really, you touched on it. It's that he, the coordinators that he has are not his guys. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you lean towards incomplete because you lean towards incomplete because you know that. You listen to the Ole Miss podcast, you read between the lines, like major staff changes are coming. There may not be a single assistant retained after the season. I would love to see, there's a handful of guys I would love to see stick around. I'd love to see Jacob Peeler, the wide receivers coach, stick around. I would love to see, I just forgot his name. The linebackers, John Summerall. I'd love to see him stick around. I would love to see Freddie Roach, the defensive line coach, stick around. I'd love to see Jack Bicknell, the offensive line coach, stick around. But offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, all your position coaches, I think, as I just said, I think are candidates to be replaced. And so I think that you're working with a staff that's not yours. You're working with a team that he had a hand in building because he's been on the staff for a long time, but it's not the team. It's not his primary project that he built. So I think if you take it that direction, you go incomplete. But the reason that I might lean more towards bad grade than incomplete was because he did have these coaches on staff last year. And he does not seem – I heard somebody say this on a podcast the other day, and it made a lot of sense, that he does not seem to have really put his own imprint on the program yet. Mm-hmm. That his desire to hang on to these guys was to establish some continuity. And I don't know why Ole Miss is so obsessed with continuity right now, because the staff that you're moving on – the staff and the era that you're moving on from – right. It was great for a little while, but it ended so disastrously. And it's not, it's not Luke's fault that the NCAA just finished a 6-year probe that resulted in a 2-year bowl ban. It's not Luke's fault that the head coach before him decided just not to recruit defensive players at all and instead sign 1,000 4-star wide receivers. That's not on him. But at the same time, you were the interim, and now and then you had a full, and then you had the job, then you won the job going in. You had the chance to make changes last season. It was obvious that changes needed to be made last season, and you didn't do it. When you have the authority to do it, you have and you have the backing. You have the backing of the fan base to do it. So I still don't understand why he didn't do that. Because I don't think that the defense that Ole Miss is running complements the offense, because the defense has to be on the field for 100 plays. I mean, that's not even like, that's not
for 45 minutes a game.
Yeah. I mean, that's not even like, because the offense either goes 3 and out or scores a touchdown in 2 plays. And that's not good for a defense that's very thin and is very not talented.
Yeah. And like we had even talked about that before the season started. Was it something that was going to be important for Ole Miss to have any sort of success this year? Was for their defense to stay off the field, and that they would need some help from their offense to hold sustained drives, and that hasn't been the case. Like,
well, the one position group on Ole Miss's defense, their secondary, has experienced at least two ACL tears. So you've got, and that was with, Jalen Jones is potentially an NFL defensive back. He's really good. And he's out. And then Montreal Custis, who has not been particularly great, but has played hard and done a good enough job. He got hurt. And you just continue to lose guys, especially in the secondary. You got a few other guys that are banged up and nicked up that are missing, 2-3 weeks at a time. So, but again, this is, instead of being able to come out in front of the fan base in his press conferences and say, look, this team, we love these guys. They're playing hard for us. They're giving their all every week. They love Ole Miss. You guys should support them. But this is not the team that we're trying to build. And, we just ask that you be patient with us. And we're going to get our guys that's going to fit our scheme. Instead of being able to say that, they've got to come out and say, no, Coach McGriff is doing a great job. We believe in him, blah, blah, whatever. When everybody knows that's not true. Everybody knows he's getting fired at the end of the year, period. And then the offense, the offensive scheme is just so bad. I mean, you've got all these amazing wide receivers, and you've got a very good running back, and you're running a system that's not utilizing any of their skills or abilities. And you've got a good senior quarterback in Jordan Thomas. Just the whole thing is frustrating. And the reality is, it's Matt Luke's program, and he had the opportunity to make those changes, and he didn't. And I think that's where it leads to a bad grade, because you haven't done a good job. And now at this point, the scuttlebutt is that a lot of defensive players in recruiting are kind of looking and saying, well, like Wesley McGriff's defense ain't going to get it done. And if he gets fired, we don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be. So, what? Excuse me. Why am I wasting my time looking at Ole Miss? And so you've got the potential to start to see recruiting suffer. And if recruiting starts to suffer, which recruiting already has suffered, but if it continues to suffer, then you're looking at not 2019, not 2020, maybe 2021 before you start to really look at being competitive. And when I say competitive, I mean, you're talking about, hey, we're all excited that we're driving to the Liberty Bowl on New Year's Day. So,
the whole culture thing is weird, because you would think that Matt Luke would want to separate himself from the Hugh Freeze era as much as he could. And so
that's why I think it was in everybody's best interest after last season would have been for Ole Miss to have at the end of the year said, Matt, thank you. We appreciate you. Here's Ross Bjork's letter of recommendation for the small school that you go and accept the head coaching position at. And after you cut your teeth, if things don't go well here, then we'll bring you back and have you come on as our head coach later when you had some experience in running and building a program. And that's not what they did.
Yeah. I think that it was like, I get what you're saying. I just think that it would have been hard for a program to, after the way things went last offseason, throwing Luke into the fire and him winning 6 games with that huge distraction, and say, thanks for your service. We're going to look elsewhere. I get that for the health of the program, that might have been the correct move, but just in terms of like, there's the loyalty factor there for sure. And, part of that's why certain coaches go to certain programs. So instead of getting rid of your coordinators and all the coaches that you went through last year and coming into this year with a very talented offense, now you're going to be doing that when a lot of the talent on offense is leaving and you're left with, still some talented players, but not the explosive talent that you have this year, and a defense that's still going to be pretty bad with all new coaching. And you're basically having a hard reset, and basically just trying to recruit from scratch, which is always difficult.
You're taking the hard reset and you're stretching it out over 3 seasons.
Right.
Instead of doing it after
the
first season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, look, the year that he was the interim coach, he wasn't and shouldn't have made staff changes that year.
Right.
That's where you go and say, look, this is for continuity's sake. This is for health of the program, whatever.
But like once you're given the keys to the car, then you can clean house. Yeah. And you should have,
Yeah, I agree with you there. And then if you look at who else was considered, and from everything I've heard and read, Ross Bjork basically had Dave Doran at North Carolina State lined up and ready to go, and then Luke won the Egg Bowl, and the decision came down from above Ross Bjork that Matt Luke was to be hired. And so that's kind of a tough pill to swallow when, I know that they lost to Clemson pretty badly, but when it's late October and Dave Doran is playing in a game at NC State of all places that has playoff implications.
Right.
Now look, that's not to say, it's absolutely not to say that Ole Miss's record would be any different right now. It still probably would be 5-3. I mean, that they still probably, maybe
you still lose to Bama and probably LSU, maybe not as badly, but the Auburn,
maybe
Auburn's a tough pill.
Maybe Doran finds a way to beat Auburn. If different things happen. Oh gosh, excuse me. As different things happen and different players do different things, maybe Doran finds a way to get that Auburn win, but. There was a lot of criticism about Dave Doran and, well, he doesn't fit the Ole Miss culture and this, that, and whatever. But, I saw that he was incredibly successful at Northern Illinois. And I saw, again, like I said, he has got North Carolina State of all people, playing in a game on October the 21st with playoff implications. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. And with that, you have the ability, like I said a second ago, you have the ability to stand up in front of the fan base and say, look, this is not the team that we built. We love these guys. They're playing hard. They're all great Rebels, but this is not the team that we built. And fans can buy in and say, okay, we're willing to be a little patient with this because we understand it was a mess. and we understand that things went really, really wrong, and so we're ready to kind of see what this new coach who brought this new staff can do. Instead, we're looking at in a lot of ways, in a lot of key positions, the same staff that was in place in the 2016 season, which was a 5-7 season.
Right.
And so it's harder for Luke to stand up and say, hey, this is not the team that we built. It's like, well, you were the associate head coach for several of those years. This is the team that you built. And even if you make staff changes, which I believe that he will, but even if you make staff changes, there's no guarantee they're going to be good changes. Yeah. And they came 2 years too late. So that's why I'm inclined to kind of swing back and maybe give him like a D or an F. But that's whatever. That's where we are.
Yeah, agreed. The only thing that I can really fault Matt Luke for is like we said, that he decided incorrectly to keep the status quo this year and then make adjustments next year. And that's gonna set him back a little bit.
I think status quo is the right word, because look, yes, in order for Hugh Freeze to get these guys to come on and be coordinators and assistants and stuff, he had to pay them a lot of money.
Yeah,
he had to pay a lot of money to come in, and so, but the the $3-4 million buyout that you end up having to pay to all the coaches probably pales in comparison to the amount of money that you're going to lose at 11 o'clock next Saturday morning when the stadiums against South Carolina are 60% empty.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But what do I know? Almost nothing. So
none of us do.
Yeah, we're all idiots.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. So, as we said, this has been an overtime episode. That's our coaching midterm. I'm sure we'll do a final exam later in the season once all the dust is settled.
Along with a podcast that I'm excited about, in which we look at what happens if there is a coaching Royal Rumble.
Yeah, so if anybody listens to this and wants to donate to the cause and buy me WWE 2K19, I will go in and with painstaking detail create every SEC coach as a wrestler. I will upload their school's fight songs, and I will put them all on a Royal Rumble, and I will live stream it on Twitch. Yes. If somebody would do that, I will make that happen, and we will determine who wins the SEC Coaches Royal Rumble. So, we'll make that happen.
Just a solid plug there, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, thanks for listening. I'm Chandler, and for Keith, we are saying thank you for listening. Good night, and stay tuned because Young Sheldon is next.